Hello and welcome to Nerdarchy. For nerds, by nerds, I'm Nerdarchy Steve. Today I'm hanging out with this nerd.
Nerdarchy Ted, how are you doing this fine and lovely evening, sir?
I am doing well. Just we got in a little bit of football before coming down here, and I left on a bit of a cliffhanger, so I don't know if the Eagles won or lost yet. Uh,
Oh man,
I heard yelling going up on upstairs. I'm under the assumption that they nearly lost it at the very end and managed to pull it out, but barely.
that's your that's your guess based on a long distance insight roll.
Long distance insight roll. Also, there was a fumble that happened very close to the Eagles' end zone, with the Eagles
Ooh,
only being ahead by like 3 points. So yeah,
it's a scary thing.
it is a scary
But
thing.
we're not here to talk about
Sports ball.
you know sports ball. We're here to talk about nerdy stuff and what have you.
We are. We're going to be talking about the Unearthed Arcana update number 7 for the playtest stuff. And man, these things are like packed.
It is a lot. They've been right at around 54 pages for the last several of them, and it is work to get through, especially when like sometimes you have to like really squeeze and decipher to try and figure out like, all right, what are you really making here? Like, yeah, we have these little gray boxes that talk about there's these changes, but when you've got so many different copies of rule sets running around in your head between the original stuff, Xanathar's, Tasha's, all of the different Unarcana and playtest. They've talked about it being 1 D&D, and lots of people talking about it being 5.5, and now they're like, no, we're not, it's not 5.5, and we're not going to mention 1 D&D anymore. It's just
I
it's
will
crazy.
say the one thing I do like about what they are doing is as the more books came out, there were some like clear winners when it came to subclasses, and
Mhm.
definitely other subclasses that were getting left far behind. And I
Sure.
feel like this is going to kind of level that out. There's still going to be like there were some winners and losers, but for the most part,
Right.
it's going to level things out so that it's mostly equal. Um, you know,
Sure.
even in this UA, we see, and some of the previous ones we've seen, some love given to some of the classes. Sometimes in a bad way and sometimes in a good way. But the good thing is they do seem to be like listening to the feedback.
They are listening to the feedback, but I also feel like, especially with uh, all of the streamed games that are out there, I really feel that there are people watching and reporting back of like, all right, it seems that this particular skill direction or this particular spell gets used an awful lot. I guess that means it's too good or it's overpowered. How can we dial this thing back? There's some things that I feel that you know they came at a skill or an ability with a certain expectation,
Yeah,
and it's been used in other directions that they're now like, okay, well, you can't do that anymore. And some things I'm happy with, and some things I'm certainly
all right, well, let's dive in. We'll start kind of going through. We're not going to cover everything, I imagine, but
not
we'll
sure.
see what we can get to.
So
So
I figured we would, primarily look at, the design note changes.
yes,
I feel like that has the biggest impact on what this 54 pages are.
that works for me. So basically, we're going to be looking at for the most part 5 classes: barbarian, fighter, sorcerer, warlock, and wizard. And we got some new subclasses, which I was happy to see. Um, some more happy to see than others, and and also I'm not entirely sure. Like the brawler looks really cool, and I like that. But I just wonder if I wouldn't rather have that as a barbarian subclass than a fighter subclass.
Sure. I definitely understand that, and that was while they've certainly moved away from the concept of the everybody getting subclass powers at the same levels, that is now removed as an option because they've gone back to, as they call it, oh, how it appears in the 2014 Player's Handbook.
Yeah. Although I think, are you sure? Because in here, I thought all the subclasses seem to be coming in at third.
No, they have gone back to um, yeah, with the last UA, they kind of mentioned that they were doing that change. Let me come back down here and look at Wizard because well, Sorcerer had it as well.
Yeah, because I feel like because I was thinking the same thing, but I feel like they pulled back last UA and then this one they reverted to the same levels again. Yeah, I'm seeing third up to Sorcerer so far, and I'm pretty sure like when I read through it, that was one of the things I like did a double take on, and I was like,
Yeah,
Warlock
no,
third,
Sorcerer gets 3, 6, 14, 18 as opposed to 3, 6, 10, 14,
but
which
they're
was
all
had
coming in at
before.
third, which that's a big change from what it was before.
Sure, yeah.
Which I kind of prefer because it became too easy to cherry pick
Sure,
when you're looking at when you add in multi-classing.
right.
With some classes getting it at first or second compared to third.
Yeah. Wizard, Druid, Cleric, were all low level
Sorcerer,
cherry picks.
yeah.
Sorcerer is Sorcerer and Cleric were first. Wizard and Druid were second. Uh, it really allowed for those meaty jumps.
So Barbarian, there's a couple things going on there that actually I think all the changes there are good.
Sure, a lot of things like moved down. Uh, in where you get access to stuff. Uh,
Reckless attack now it lasts for the full entirety of the round. So if you get something like if you get to take say an attack of opportunity, you'll now get advantage with that attack as well. Which it makes sense because reckless attack is a big trade off, right, for the barbarian,
Absolutely.
especially if you're facing a lot of foes. They're
Right.
then rolling a lot of dice at your way, which I've
Indeed.
definitely experienced
Both as a DM and as a player.
as a DM and as a player. As basically as a player, whenever I play barbarian, I suck at rolling dice in general, so I just always reckless attack. I was
Sure. I
like
mean, you you had categorically stated in my last game that you were a part of, you were like, all right, unless I say otherwise, I'm attacking recklessly.
yeah,
I'm
unless
like, all right, noted.
unless there's something giving me advantage to my attack rolls, it's like I'm taking reckless. Um, so a couple things worth noting is primal knowledge, whatever. It's kind of cool. It gives you a little bit of something else. The reckless attack we just mentioned, very cool. Instinctive pounce has just become part of the kit now instead of an option that it was in Tasha's.
Hmm.
Here's the thing that I really like. It's brutal critical. Now it just does a flat die. It's not based on your weapon. You punch them, it's a die
Nice.
12. Use a great sword, it's a die 12. And I don't know like if they're just trying to encourage people before to use a great axe or what, because even like using the great sword wasn't as good because you only got one of the d6s. You didn't get them both. Yeah.
Correct.
So I like that they leave like no matter what weapon you choose, the benefit is the same.
And I like that, that leveling factor of like, all right, you got a critical with a dagger and
Yeah.
bam, you're lumping on this extra D12 to that is awesome as opposed to like, oh well.
Yeah. And then Primal Champions back, which should have never left because it's in my opinion, one of the best abilities in the game, and that is getting the +4 to strength and con, and you can get up to a 24 in your stats with those. Like
Yeah,
of
it's
of all the classes, if you were really going to make it all the way to 20th level, which rarely happens, but if you were if I was positive I'm playing a game It's going to go to 20th level, and I'm going to be a barbarian. I feel like that's a hard ability to multi-class away from, because it is one of the best in the game.
Yeah, I feel Barbarian and Paladin both getting massive abilities at 20th level. Those are the ones that if you're going to play a full campaign, it is not worth multi-classing away from, because if you're going to get there,
Yeah.
it's worth the payoff.
So, couple things with Berserker. Like, only one of the changes is new since the last UA, but the other change, like their frenzy has changed to before, whereas like you get to make an attack as a bonus action as it is now, and after the combat you have a level of exhaustion, which sucked and was totally unworth it because there's so many other ways to get another attack with a bonus action that it seemed like such a waste to do, right? Um, which they moved away from that. You just get bonus damage instead, which I'll take any day of the week. But one of the things we used to joke about this, when we initially went over the Berserker in, when 5e first came out, was that the intimidating presence. You you had to use your action to keep one guy frightened every round. Now it's a bonus action and it's multiple opponents. So now it truly is an intimidating presence.
As well it should be. And I feel, when you looked at it before, you can get a level of exhaustion and you can action to keep one guy frightened. I felt like that's why nobody played the Berserker. Like
Yeah.
it kind of sucked. Like so now it's kind of on more on par with some of the others.
Brian Brian Smith, brutal critical with a turkey leg, D12. Yes, all day long. Improvised weapon. You just need Tavern Brawler to make it complete. Then you can grapple them immediately after you hit them upside the head with your turkey leg. So we get the total barbarian gets revised to the wild heart, and really what they did is they nerfed the bear totem at third level because it was really hard to pick another type of barbarian because I don't know, resistance is like almost every type of damage is really hard to pass up.
Yeah, and you do see a lot of totem barbarians because of that. I feel that there are going to be a lot of upset people, uh, not having that not having that resistance to everything anymore. But it's like,
Well, I mean, they did pull it back a little bit, and now you get two extra resistances instead. I think you can change them out, so that's kind of cool. They also changed all the names, so it's always a different animal. And like,
yes,
yeah, and when I was reading through, some of them are kind of like revised versions of what already existed, and some of them are even better. Like the eagle, for the third level, where bear gives you the extra resistances. Eagle now looks like, man, might be a winner to me. When you activate your rage as a bonus action while it's active, you can take both a disengage and dash action.
that's
It's not
pretty nice.
it's end, so you do both. So that makes you super super mobile on the battlefield. Now, I don't in some ways I don't know how useful it's going to be in the sense that the idea of kind of like tanking is being sticky, and that is the
Mhm.
opposite of being sticky unless you think you're going to be able to kite the enemy and pull them away from your allies. But if not, it does just kind of make you a terror on the battlefield, going wherever you want with impunity.
Right.
But I was also thinking that when you combine eagle um, with falcon at higher levels, when you get the fly speed, you legit have flyby attack.
Yeah.
So I don't know. But, yeah, some things to point out there. It's mostly the same with a little bit more skill emphasis and more. I think more things to make it interesting. Like the 6th level bear ability was interesting, kind of fun and interesting the way it was, but it doesn't. I don't think it really was getting used as much, so that might be why they kind of moved away from it. Like that's even if like you have a game where people are really tracking encumbrance, right? Like I
Mhm.
know most of the games I play in anymore, no one even cares.
Right.
Like you have
But
to be
I
really
love the fact
ridiculous.
that they've added in, you know, skill options that you either can gain proficiency, or if you've got an expertise in a variety of skills, and then again built into, when you level, you can make these choices almost as if, like, you know you're going through, all right, well, let me perform a ritual and change, who my spirit animal is at this moment. And or like, oh, well, I'm going to add a tattoo that, then incorporates what this is. Whether you're, you know uh you know what's the word I'm looking for? Whether you're seeking inspiration from, like, Dar the Beastmaster, or like Conan, or what have you. There's plenty of places where I feel like this particular subclass can draw those aspects from.
Yeah, there's definitely some cool things there. So then we get a whole new barbarian path, the path of the world tree, which is very controlly. You get some ability to manipulate the battlefield a bit more than barbarians normally get. It's not just about damage for them.
You've got the ability to, you know, uh, heal hit points when you rage, and grant temporary hit points to your allies. I think, that aspect, like right off the bat, is pretty interesting. So, like, all right, certainly not great for your first combat of the day, but if you're having multiple, you being able to heal at the start of a battle, like, all right, you're invigorated by, the the ready bloodshed. I think that's kind of nifty.
And then also we're kind of seeing like with this path that some of the features interact with weapon properties, which are new. Yeah,
Hmm.
hopefully they'll do more stuff with that. Eh, I don't think they're going to, but it would have been kind of cool to play with that with the Battle Master Fighter a little bit more. Um,
True.
but I mean, their superior dice are pretty cool. But if there was a way to combine that with like the weapon properties to make it, I don't know, integrate them a little bit.
They're
Also,
still working on it, so hopefully.
yeah, they're still working on. Also, you get some teleporting for a barbarian as well. We're definitely getting more magicy with our barbarians. That trend is continuing on.
Yeah, I feel the travel along the tree, um, you know, definitely requires like more of a, I'd say, like, more of a Diablo kind of thing of like, oh, does your world have like regularly set up teleportation circles that people use? Uh, if not, well, then that sucks for you. At least that was my interpretation upon reading it. Of like, you know, you need to have the destination in mind. So
Yeah, that one it will really depend on how your GM decides to interpret that. But also like you can travel between worlds, so some planar travel. I don't know. It's definitely a different take on the barbarian.
sure, and it's got some Thor inspired lines with it, because it's like, it's talking about Yggdrasil, the world tree. So like, if you've watched the MCU, or if you're familiar with the Norse mythology, then you're a little bit more in tune with what the basis of this particular subclass is coming from.
Yeah, it would probably really fitting for a Norse style campaign or Norse themes. So Path of the Zealot, they made one fix here that I think is super useful because there's certain subclasses, right, or just features in the game in general that rely on you basically having to be dropped or in some cases die. They're just far less useful and exciting because one, like your goal should be for those things to not happen.
Right.
um, so they did update the Zelda a little bit. So Warrior of the Gods gives some extra benefits in addition to you know, being cheaper to resurrect you from the dead.
Right. I feel like the name of Rage Beyond Death is just kind of amusing because it doesn't really pertain to death at all. I mean, like I think it used to be, but it's
Yeah.
like all right, when when your relentless rage successfully restores hit points, you can assume the form of a spectral warrior. While in this form, you get a fly speed, and when you're hit by an attack roll, you can use your reaction to turn that attack into a miss. Like, all right, all the way down at the bottom, it lasts for 1 minute until you regain any hit points or drop to zero. There's nothing about beyond death here. Like, the name is just wrong.
So moving on to fighter, I feel like they made a lot of changes um, on the base class.
Yeah, and the first one I kind of alluded to that I need to talk about is action search.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. Now you
Action
can't use the
search.
magic action, which by Raw in 5e, it is like the only way to cast two spells at the same time in the same
Yep.
round that are
And
first level or
they're like,
higher.
no, 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 can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
I am like, well,
I mean,
so
Wizards, why do you hate fun? That's all I have to say.
So I feel a lot of people are going to be, pretty upset at that aspect. I mean, the number of spellcasters who have like, oh, I feel that I need martial training
Yeah.
and take 2 levels of fighter, just to gain, that action surge. And I mean, second wind ain't bad.
Well,
The hit dice isn't bad.
second win, you get a lot more of them than you used to.
You do.
Now it used to
They
be
got
that
a
you would restore them all on a short rest. I think it only went up to two eventually anyway. But now it goes all the way up to four, and when you take a short rest, you regain one of them, one use. So you get a lot more uses of second win than you were before. Weapon masteries, they increased that by one, which since we're not really using a lot of these in our games yet, it doesn't really make that much of a difference to us. But I am kind of excited to add in the weapon masteries into our games, and it looks like all the martial classes are gonna get them to some degree or another.
hmm What are your thoughts on tactical mind?
Let's see. Tactical mind. What do I think about that?
So you have a mind for tactics and getting the upper hand on and off the battlefield. When you fail an ability check, you can expend a use of your second wind to push yourself towards success. Rather than regaining hit points, you roll a d10 and add the number rolled to the ability check, potentially turning it into a success. If the check still fails, the use of second wind isn't expended.
So, I mean, one, anytime you can use a resource basically for free, like it either works or you keep the resource. So I call that for that's
hmm
what I'm calling for free. I
Yep.
think that's great. It does give the fighter a little bit more options. Although I will say that once you start stacking up all these dice manipulation things, they do get ridiculous after a while. Uh,
Sure.
I mean the best part is at least with this, it only affects the fighter when they do it. But
Right.
like I recently ran a campaign with two artificers, and you know there was very little failing of skill checks and saving throws.
Yeah. Flashy genius, man. It's good
It,
stuff.
it is good stuff. So yeah, I think it's cool, and it also makes the fighter more viable when it comes to skill challenges if you're using those in your game. And
Yeah.
they can be more than a bag of hit points.
And that was what I was like. I was leaning towards. Like, I really enjoy skill challenges both as a player and as a GM. So having the fighter who like can technically be more than just, oh, I'm a guy who swings a weapon. I like this, this thought, and this is a base class ability. You get this at level 2. Uh, so like you could just be like, nah, I'm not about regaining hit points. I'm about, being impressive on skill checks. I think that can be a lot of fun. And, yeah, it's just a D10, but man, that's a big swing on, a system that's designed with 30 being, the epitome. Regardless of what you've got as your modifiers or your proficiency, you could technically max out 2 dice and hit that, that impossible number.
Yeah, they really need to up that impossible number to like 50
Sure,
or at
sure.
least 40, right? Because as many times as we've seen the impossible. Also, they're it's just the sheer number of things they're now tying the second wind. Which again, we kind of like when you get to expend different resources in different ways. But at fifth level, that tactical shift is pretty sweet. In addition to getting the healing, you can also move up to half your speed without provoking attacks of opportunity. Now, I wonder if that also applies to tactical mind because you're technically expending your second
I
wind.
would imagine. I would imagine so. I mean, it says whenever you activate your second wind, with a bonus action. uh, I mean, technically, if you're using a skill check, like as part of a
Yeah.
skill challenge or something, like you know, this shift could really be like a big difference. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well,
We'll have to see how things play out.
yeah. I mean, because it does say when you fail an ability check, you can spend a use of your second wind. And it's not even like it's saying you can use second wind, expend second. You can use second wind to power another feature. It's still saying the second wind. So I'm kind of curious about that. Uh,
Well, I mean, if you look at it that way, like that sounds like it's tied to whatever action you're using to roll the check. Where tactical shift says whenever you use second wind with a bonus action. So the
oh
specific
yeah, that's
wording
true because
does
there's no
kind of
action, and that might be very intentional as well. Because yeah, because there's no action to use it in tactical mind if it's just an ability check.
so. I mean, six of one. I'm certain that there's people who are going to continue to argue that one for a while, but it does sound like, as design standpoints, you're getting one or the other.
Yeah, so Crawford will weigh in eventually. So Battle Master, we have a couple changes. Um, you get another proficiency with Student of War. Before I think it's a skill proficiency. Before I think you were just getting a tool proficiency. Know your enemy actually got better,
Yep,
and it only requires a bonus action to do it. And then also relentless means you're going to always have access to superiority dice, pretty much, even if it's only one around.
yep. Which
Which,
that I feel is, you know, clutch for a battle master. Like, you always want to be using these things. So if you're out of them, it sucks.
yeah, and I've definitely had characters that were designed that could go through them really fast.
Oh yeah.
Um,
I mean, most of the time, it's like, all right, you want to pull through those dice as quickly as possible, so that you're being as effective as possible.
so, what did you think of the new subclass for fighter?
So the brawler,
Yes.
as I started reading this one, I uh I kind of looked at it and didn't realize it was new at first because it was talking about, fighting unarmed. And I
Uh,
already knew that there was, the fighting style. So as I started reading through, I'm like, okay, this makes sense. This is cool. This is neat. And I'm like, wait a second. You can't get all of this from a fighting style.
mm,
So I had to like go back to the beginning and start rereading it. Um, so to to basically be like, all right, I'm gonna play the thug. I'm gonna play, the the guy that's just fisticuffs and no, I'm not a monk. I'm the martial combatant here. I kind of dig it. I like that it's incorporating unarmed and incorporating the improvised weapons, which it automatically grants you proficiency with, so you don't need to take that feat. I really like it. What's here.
I
Um,
I would
you
much
know, you,
prefer it as a barbarian subclass because
sure. Well,
here's what's going to happen, right? It's very cool, but what are you going to do as a fighter? You're going to slather on plate mail, right? To have a decent armor class, and to me that looks silly, right? Like basically it's the brawlers designed as a pugilist or even a tavern brawler or whatever.
mhm.
But then it becomes kind of ridiculous and silly when you stick them in a tin can. That's why I think it works much better as the barbarian. It's
Sure. And
thematically and
from that standpoint, I would agree. But like whole cloth of what's presented here, I like it.
yeah.
And like you can approach this from a dexterity standpoint. Um, and play with the agile guy, and therefore you don't need to slap on the plate mail. Uh, but all in all, I like what's here.
Well, the problem with like the agile part, right, is you still need a high strength because it's still based
Sure.
off of your strength for your offense.
Right.
It's not like the monk where and rightly so. It's not like where the monk where you can replace um your attack with your strength with dexterity for your attack and
Right.
damages. Right? And it shouldn't anyway because that would just step all over the monk's toes. This creates a
Right.
different style. That's why I think either they need either figure out something to either a benefit to them when they're unarmored, they to help them with the armor class, or no, just shift it over to the barbarian where it belongs.
And like I said, I'd be okay with that as well. But like whole cloth, take it as it is. I would play it and have no problem with it
Yeah,
being a fighter class.
yeah, I like it as presented. It's just like to me thematically, when I just know what's going to happen, just kind of loses a little something something for me.
Sure.
So champion, I think champion got like I've always thought champion was a decent subclass anyway. It's simplistic, but it does it's really good at doing what it does. So a remarkable athlete. Uh, you get initiative on or advantage on initiative rolls and athletics checks, in addition to increasing your long jump. Instead of it basically being like if you do anything physical and you're not proficient, you then get half your proficiency bonus. But the big thing is like heroic warrior.
Yep.
It's no joke. You just have inspiration essentially all the time.
So during combat, you can give yourself heroic advantage whenever you start your turn without it. And by roll, like you could be like, all right, every round, I'm like, all right, I'm making one of my attacks with advantage.
Yeah. Oh, and the other
How it
thing I
goes.
really like is the additional fighting style at seventh instead of 10th.
Uh-huh.
Because seventh is a level we see way more often, and one of the cool things about the champion is getting those additional fighting styles.
Indeed.
All right, so Eldritch Knight, they got a little bit of bump with their war magic and improved war magic. They both got a little bit better. It's no longer based off of bonus actions and actions per se. It's actually you get to replace an attack with with spells or cantrips, which is way cooler. Because at a certain point, you really have to think long and hard if you want to swap out, you know, 3, 4 attacks for a single spell, uh, or several attacks for a cantrip. At that point, right? Like, but if you get to do both, I think one, it's just thematic, and two, you no longer have to really choose as much because you can do either or.
So with the fighter being able to get all the way up to 4 attacks a round, you could technically take an attack, cast a cantrip, and cast a second level spell. once you've gotten to 20th level, and still, be within the rules of the game.
Yeah. Well, all right. So actually, you have to replace two of your attacks with first level or a second level
Right.
spell.
Yeah. So you make one regular attack,
Yep.
you cast one cantrip, and you cast a second level spell.
Yeah. When you're
As a
maxed out.
20th
Yeah.
level guy, you get four.
Now I have to crawl over it a little bit for it to make sure they're not like you can't like they don't claw back the cantrip from you when you're casting the spell. But I mean, it jives with the standard rules,
Right.
so it should be good. So
But all in all,
sorcerer.
I think that those changes for Eldritch Knight really make them shine.
Yeah, I mean, especially if it does work that way. So when you're top tier, you basically cast a cantrip, cast a spell, and make an attack. Thematically, it will. I don't know how effective it'll be, but it'll look cool.
So we get with sorcerer, we get innate sorcery. So you can spend a bonus action, uh, and you can basically for the next minute, the spell save DC of your sorcerer spells increases by one, and you have advantage on attack rolls of sorcerer spells you cast. You can use it twice per day. It's pretty fun. Um, I'd love to see there be some kind of flavor attached to this of like what does this look like for a draconic sorcerer versus a celestial sorcerer, just so that there is some manifestation. Um,
Well, I
because like
feel
otherwise
like
it's like
I was gonna say I feel like there's enough wiggle room there to for the players to come up with their own like thematic,
sure. I
representation,
just
what
I
that looks
feel
like.
I know this is a UA, but I feel like it's missing that that caveat, and even throwing in a hey, come up with your own design of what you feel, blah blah blah, whatever. uh,
But I do like this the fact that like that one first level ability means some of the time the sorcerer's magic is more potent than other
mhm.
spellcasters in a sense. Even though that it's they don't have as much variety as a lot of the other casters do.
Yeah, I like that as well. uh,
There was something else that
yeah.
was tied to that I thought was worth mentioning.
The arcane apotheos uh, is meant to enhance that all the way at 20th level.
Oh yeah, that is friggin' it's 20th level though, right? So it's like whatever, why not? You're like god tier. But basically you're just throwing while that's active, you're just throwing meta magics out for no cost, which would then free up your sorcery points to do other things with. Um
So for 2 minutes a day, you just be like, all right, meta magics galore, one free per round, without spending the points is huge, which means you could then use your sorcery points instead of doing, the, without with it, instead of using them for the meta magics, it would mean like, oh, well, now you can create spell slots and be more, be casting more spells.
or certain subclasses and whatnot have other ways to use your sorcery points, so you could be fueling those
Mhm.
abilities instead of using them on your meta magics.
But speaking of meta magics, uh, what do you feel about the changes that they've made here?
Which ones are you talking about?
So like distance spells just returned to just doubling the range as opposed to increasing it by a set amount. Uh, the seeking spell has been reduced to one, used to be two. Uh, subtle spells, it's normal. It's just clarified that you
Yeah.
still need the expensive, but twinned is the one that I feel like many people are going to be upset about. So the way twinned works now is any spell that has a single target, you can cast twin and it affect two targets. The way it's currently written is if the spell that you're casting can
Hmm.
be cast at a higher level and has multiple targets, you can twin it to hit those multiple targets. So like there is no twinning your cantrips to hit multiple people, damaging them.
Yeah,
And I feel that
I suspect that is not going to stick.
yeah, I hope it doesn't because I don't like that change.
I
you
so
know,
like I would say why not do both, right? Like you pick, right? Depending on what it is. But especially especially if the cost is if they keep the cost to one sorcery point. Because twin before was also a lot more expensive. I believe
yes,
this cost is a function of
the
the
level of
level of
spell.
spell. So it's like yeah, you could twin or you can twin disintegrate, but it's going to cost you a bunch of points as it should because it's disintegrate.
Right.
Um, and you can't do that for 1 point. So
No, 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 no.
yeah, I think they should just leave that one alone. That one feels a little like change for change's sake.
And I'm actively playing a sorcerer, so I look at some of these things and I'm like, all right, this one kind of hurts. Um, yeah, and like I enjoy doing things like twin haste. Not that I've done it recently, but it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and also like figuring out what's and that was like one of the cool things about the sorcerer in the sense that you were the only one that could concentrate in essence on two spells at the same time,
Mhm.
and this version totally loses that. So nerds to that. Give it back, Wizards. I think they will.
Give it back.
Yeah. So subclasses.
We got
There's
draconic sorcery.
they're still tinkering with that. We get a presence instead of a breath weapon. What do you prefer, breath weapon or presence?
Well, I feel like the breath weapon option that they had before just wasn't as strong as what you would be doing with your sorcery spells. So, like, I'm kind of okay with, having the draconic
Uh,
presence.
but wasn't it like a bonus
Especially,
action or something before though? So you could
yeah, but I mean,
technically,
there's Dragon's Breath as a second level spell that, like, if
uh,
you want to be able to breathe elemental damage, just cast that freaking spell. Like,
that's true.
it's super easy. Like, like it's an elemental spell, so like when you cast it, it's you choose what you're going to breathe. So it's
Yeah,
not like you can be like, oh no, it's not like the like fireball is always fireball. It always does fire damage. Uh, Whereas that one spell, lots of options.
yeah. I'm kind of indifferent mostly on the draconic because let's face it, most of us were taking draconic because well, dragons and two armor class and hit points, right? Like that's I think that's where we were going with that. Which that
Sure,
part got better in the last version and continues to be better with the number of hit points you get and becoming tankier, which is cool. Uh, Now wild magic sorcerer, the or wild magic sorcery. This one's all good. Like they fix all the problems that we initially had with the wild magic sorcerer.
I would agree. There's a
Being
lot of fun that's here.
wild magic surge. Now, if you're playing in my game, it's not an issue because I just blanket statement and say, boom, surge next time. Like you cast a spell. I don't even like. I feel like if you're playing a wild magic sorcerer, that's what you want. You want that
You want to roll
randomness.
on that
You
table.
want to roll on that table, right? But like, if your DM isn't thinking about it or doesn't care or doesn't like chaos interjected into their game, they control whether you roll on that table or not. And that
Right.
being taken out of their hands in this instance, I am actually good with. Um, which Tides of Chaos kind of just rolls into what we're kind of talking about with the Wild Magic surges. Ben Luck was a great ability, but it was overpriced, and now
Now
bringing
it's
it
1 point
down
instead of two.
one instead of two. To me, it makes a big difference.
A huge difference.
You
I mean,
know,
essentially double the amount of times that you can do it in a day. I mean, Falcor in your game, use that a lot. Like he was very heavy into the chaos and the dice manipulation. So it was definitely fun. And I look back to that game and see like, well, if if he had been able to do it for one instead of two, like I felt like it would definitely have been used a whole heck of a lot more.
yeah, even more than he was already using it.
Hmm.
So, Warlock, dude, there are some things to talk about Warlock.
It's a big one. So
They're
they,
going
they go
back to
back.
pack magic, which
They're going back to pack magic.
I was kind of mad on, but they do fix it in the sense by they technically are giving them more castings. Um, not not a ton, but you do get they have an ability that actually gives them their magical cunning gives regain lets them I think they take 10 minutes and they regain a spell, which as a warlock with as few slots as they get, definitely needed and cool. I think they get more invocations than they did before, and
So the magical cunning is a minute. The
yeah,
invocations go all the way up to 10, which they used to only be able to get 8. Uh, so you're getting 8 by the time you've hit 12th level. So like you start off with 1 right at first level, and then you bump that up to 3 once you hit second.
and there's a couple things with that. One, they rolled your pack boons into it, which is fine. So it gives you kind of like some wiggle room to play with, and you're not really locked into one feature over another, or
Hmm.
or you can choose, or you can not touch them at all if you don't care about them.
Right.
Is one thing. Two, you can take a feat instead, which is kind of a big deal. Like you could go crazy with feats and build out your warlock completely different than you've been able to do in the past. One of the things that is really cool is um, a lot of your invocations that used to affect um, Eldritch Blast, you can use on different cantrips now.
But you have to choose, like you select that
Yeah,
like it's got to be a warlock cantrip, and you set that in stone until you level up and you can change that again. Uh,
which I'm totally cool with
all right,
that.
well,
But it just gives you the ability to build different kinds of warlocks.
and I'm here for that all day long. Like you know I know warlock is a very popular class, and I've only had a little bit of experience, playing one. Um, you know, uh, but I feel like this has the ability to really give you even more options with, how you play with, the warlock. So,
There was a very specific Eldritch invocation I wanted to call out, and I believe it's Thirsting Blade. Uh, yeah. So now you can get as a warlock, you can get up to 3 attacks a round with the weapon, with your pack weapon, which is second only to the fighter. And matter of fact, you're right
you have
on
to
par
give.
with the fighter until you hit like 16th level. Um, Also, a lot of the invocations that the level limits on them have been dropped significantly. Like like before you had to be like at least ninth level to cast jump at will, and now I think you can do it at like fifth or something. And to me, like that was like the stuff that I really thought was kind of cool, like those at will abilities. But like a lot of the cool ones, they weren't necessarily like game breaking or they weren't going to make you uber powerful. They were just kind of cool and thematic. You can now get them much sooner.
So yeah, there's a lot of things that have changed to get them a lot sooner, and I feel that that works well. But there are a number of things that they're like, well, we're gonna get rid of this. So like Eyes of the Runekeeper gone. Uh, what was the one about the other Eldritch Sight gone. Um, they're like, well, you get access to these spells that they're on the Warlock spell list and they're rituals,
Yeah,
so you can go ahead and do that instead. And I'm like, that's a big difference between like, all right, I can just read everything, no spells, needed to, well, now I need to, with my limited spell selection, take this spell and
yeah,
then cast it in order to be able to read what's here and then see whether or not the DM is going to interpret this spell as, you know, is this text or not? So like definitely a lot more ambiguity, built into the current issues. Um, so and beast speech is another one. No, that one's gone too. So like, that's three things that were like, nope, gone, 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 gone.
yeah. You're gonna need the Book of Shadows, my friend, if you want to do that stuff.
Yes.
I mean, they also made Pack of the Blade a little bit better too, though, because you can access the masteries um, as a non-martial class. You can change up the damage type. Basically, it's basically um oh shoot, just fell right on my head. What's the war the Hexblade? So basically, you get some of the abilities that from the Hexblade rolled into it, which makes it significantly better, especially when you add in the factor that you can get at 11th level, which isn't super high, get 3 attacks around. Because I know like when you played in a game that I was running, we would play this game infrequently and we do big level jumps, and like your first time or two, like being Pack of the Blade was fine, but then you made one jump and you're like, hitting something with a stick is like the least favorable option I have, even if the stick is pointy.
Yes. And like I just feel like, all right, well, there's lots of people who have played, warlocks, from a martial aspect and they do well with them. You're only going to get so many Eldritch Smites, you're only going to get so much that you can, really pop out there. I'm like, yeah, I don't feel the desire to go down that road and what have you. I'd rather
They
I'd
have
rather take
less.
this.
I want to say though they have less gimmicks now and more tools to be effective,
Yes,
and
I would agree
also
with
it
that.
doesn't rely on a single sub. Doesn't rely on a single subclass either, so you'll be able to mix and match with different things. Sticks and stones, fiendish vigor, much better now. Yes, max. Not rolling in dice and just getting max is much better. And also,
Yeah.
I don't think you have to be the one to kill them anymore. Or is that? Or am I thinking of the fiend subclass?
That was a different thing. Fiendish Vigor is the one that allows you to cast False Life at will. Um,
Yeah, and then I think the Pact of the Fiend has an ability that's very similar to that when something dies near you. It used to be
yes, yeah.
you used to have to be the one to kill it. Now it's just got to be in the vicinity of its death. How do you feel about the Archfey being all about kind of teleporting now? Your Nightcrawler.
I mean, to be fair, yeah. I mean, you get a lot of teleport abilities. I think it's fun and chaotic as Faye could possibly be. Um, I'd have to really see how it looks on the battlefield to really see like what does that truly look like.
Well, also another nice thing about Warlocks now is your subclass spells. There aren't choices for you; you just have them prepared, which was also like kind of a bone of contention for us before too. It's like as a warlock, I get so few spells, you know, and then having to prepare. prepare these that you may or may not use made it worse. But now that they're just extras. So Celestial is included on here, and
Mm.
also I think while we're talking about spellcasters, I think it's important to call out to the fact that they're going back to class spell lists and away from the big groups. And I don't know, I kind of mixed feelings about it, but the reasons why they're doing it make sense to me.
I I didn't really like I saw that caveat, and I'm curious to know whether, like, from a design standpoint, are spells still listed as divine, arcane, and primal, and then are subsectioned into classes, or is those concepts gone? Because I liked those concepts,
Yes.
and I'd be very sad if they're completely gone.
Yeah, and I mean they're holdovers from. I think that's the what they did in fourth edition with those concepts.
Okay,
um, and then they kind of brought it back. But then they realized, well, part of the dissatisfaction from people was like, well, the thing about being a wizard is you have the most access to spells. You may not have them
right,
all personally, but as a wizard, you could possibly get them. Like that was part of being a wizard.
right.
But if you give that to everybody, well, that kind of takes away from the wizard a little bit. So like I think that's the reasoning that they call out, and I'm like, I can get behind that.
All right, we are down to the last couple of minutes. Is there any highlights that we want to, kind of mention before we close out of this?
Well, we knew we weren't going to get through it all. Trying to see if there's anything
So,
in the
uh,
wizard.
so in the wizard, level 2, you're going to get expertise in a skill that's a int-based skill. Knowledge. You know, Arcana, history, religion, nature, all of your subclasses, and instead of getting the rarely used, you get half price on adding a spell to your spell book that you find elsewhere. You just get an additional spell per level of that school. So now you're going to be gaining more spells into your spell book as a wizard because of that.
I
So
greatly appreciate that. Although I did use the half price as much as I could, but at the end of the day, you're still limited to the number of spells your GM gives you access to. And if you have
yes,
a forgetful GM that realizes you're at their mercy when it comes to adding new spells to your spell book, then you could be in a sad world where you're only getting basically those two spells every time you gain a level.
yeah, yep.
Now it's slightly better with three.
As long as you're taking one of those 8 primary schools. If you
Yeah.
go outside those realms, there's no guarantee that you're going to be getting you know that extra spell. So we'll have to see other spell what other subclasses look like
Oh,
thereafter.
so I know I mentioned this before we started. I don't know if I mentioned it before, but the ability increase feat has changed slightly. So it's still you can add 2 to 1 stat or 1 to 2 stats, but once you hit with a maximum of 20, once you hit 19th level, the maximum bumps to 22. So that's a change. They raised the roof. I want to say like more so with this particular UA playtest, I feel like we're moving in a better direction with a lot of things.
There's some things that I'm not thrilled with, but there are things that I'm excited about. When we get into the spells, I really like the sorceress eruption. Um, and I feel like that's something that I'm going to be inquiring of, like, hey, is that something my sorcerer can add on to their spell list? I like that.
What do you think about
That's really
counterspell,
nice.
man?
Counterspell is another one that's pretty crazy. It's now a saving throw as opposed to you doing a thing. But if your counterspell fails, or sorry, if your counterspell succeeds, they retain their spell slots. So it's a
Yeah,
mixed bag.
it is a mixed bag. I mean, I thought that was kind of the beauty of counterspell was not only shutting down their spell but making them waste the resource. Uh,
Yes.
which,
So
from the player side, the way they've changed how they work spells and magic and monsters greatly uh, greatly affects you, because a lot of times it's like one use or three uses, compared to having slots. So I feel like it kind of shuts down that ability more.
right. So that is one that I don't feel that I'm happy with that change.
Yeah,
I still want the resource gone, regardless of whether
how it
like
happens.
I'm the player using it on a monster or the monster using it on a player. Like the magic's
Oh,
been disrupted.
there's another thing too.
How was that?
Another way you're affected by being a saving throw. I mean, this might be a bonus for DMs, but think about it. If it's a saving throw to 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 keep from having your spell countered, as opposed to the player making an ability check to overcome the magic, or just overcoming if it's third level, that puts legendary resistance on the table.
Yep,
It's kind of a big deal.
I would wholeheartedly agree. So there's lots to unpack. It's a saving throw, which means things like luck stones are going to come into play. Um, and
Well, they
it's a
came on the play before anyway. They're just on the other side.
sure, but there are ways to
Yeah.
gamify the system, you know, regardless of which direction you're going. It's a Constitution saving throw, so like if you're already used to um like if you're already used to like concentration checks, like, all right, well then, perhaps the thing that's going to give you proficiency in con checks should certainly be a thing if you're afraid that people are going to try and counter your spells.
For sure. And now things like portents become much better. Ben luck becomes much better because you can use it to subtract anything like that. On the flip side of that was if you were using counter spell and you had a bard helping you, or um, an artificer, overcoming those checks could be a lot easier. So, but with that, it is just past 9 o'clock. We knew this one was going to be tough to get through because that is a lot of content out there. Let us know in the comments or in the chat there, if you're using it in your games, how you're using it in your games. There's a link to the update down in the description, so you can go download that for free over on D&D Beyond. And until next time, stay nerdy.
Very nerdy.